Julia met Ethan when she was just 17. He had this quiet strength in his eyes, the kind that made you feel safe, the kind that made you want to believe in something even if you didn't yet know what it is. Ethan worked at her uncle's bookstore on weekends. She came in once for a novel and ended up staying for conversations that felt like chapters of a life she didn't know she needed. He wasn't rich. He wasn't popular. But he listened. And more than that, he believed in her. He saw a version of Julia that no one else saw. The version that dreamed of snow and scholarships and cities she couldn't even pronounce. He told her, "You don't have to be like everyone else. You can leave this town. You can become something more." And she believed him, because sometimes, all a girl needs is for one person to see her light before she sees it herself. When she told her parents she wanted to apply for a scholarship abroad, they told her not to waste time. They said people like them didn't end up in places like that. But Ethan, he helped her write her personal statement. He even stayed up with her all night practicing her mock interview. He sold his old gaming console to help her pay for her passport, and when the acceptance email came, Julia screamed. Ethan cried. They celebrated under cheap fairy lights in her room, eating instant noodles and dreaming about the future. The day she left, he showed up at the airport with a note in his hand. It simply read, "No matter where you go, remember who helped you get there. I'll be cheering for you. Always." And for a while, she did remember. She messaged him every other night, sent pictures of the snow in Vermont, and told him how her professors made her feel seen. Ethan would reply with heart emojis and tell her that the bookstore wasn't the same without her. But slowly, life began to stretch her. Classes became harder. Conversations shorter. Her worldview, wider, and without meaning to, she began to change. The higher you fly, the smaller home begins to look. The more you learn, the harder it is to unlearn. And even love, sometimes, cannot grow where one person stays the same. Julia thought love could survive anything: time, distance, even change. But what she didn't realize was sometimes, love doesn't break all at once. Sometimes, it stretches. Quietly. Slowly. Until you look down one day and realize the thread has snapped. In her first few months abroad, she still texted Ethan everything. Photos of autumn leaves, late-night library selfies, funny things her roommate said. He replied quickly at first, "I miss you. Still proud of you. Call me when you can." But time zones and new worlds have a way of softening old echoes. Soon, she was attending conferences he didn't understand. Talking about professors he didn't know, using words he'd never heard before. And while Ethan was still stuck in the bookstore stacking shelves and saving money, Julia was building a new version of herself, confident, curious, expanding. She didn't mean to leave him behind, but her life was speeding up. And his wasn't moving at all. One night, he called while she was out with friends. She looked at his name on the screen and didn't pick up. She told herself she'd call back tomorrow. She didn't. That was the first time. 2 weeks later, he sent a message, just 3 words, "Are we okay?" She stared at it for 5 whole minutes, typed of course, then deleted it. Then typed "I don't know." Then deleted that too. Finally, she replied, "I'm just overwhelmed. I'll talk to you soon." She didn't, and neither did he. Ethan didn't block her. He didn't beg, he simply stopped showing up in her inbox, and quietly, gently. The boy who believed in her became a part of her story, not her present. But here's what no one talks about: success isn't always loud, and heartbreak, sometimes, it sounds like silence. Julia didn't notice the change at first. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow. Like water turning warm in your hands. She started speaking up more in class, stopped apologizing for her opinions, started walking into rooms like she belonged there. At a networking event, someone asked, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" She didn't flinch, "Running my own tech startup. Leading innovation back home." The old Julia would have laughed, the old Julia wouldn't have even attended the event, but this Julia. She was different. She began wearing her hair differently, started dressing like someone with a vision. She was no longer trying to shrink to make others comfortable, and when she passed the mirror, she sometimes didn't recognize the woman staring back, not because she looked different, but because she finally looked whole. Meanwhile, Ethan faded into a quieter corner of her mind. He was a warm memory like childhood pictures. Still there. Still beautiful, but distant. Sometimes she wondered if he still worked at the bookstore, if he still thought about her, if he ever regretted letting the silence grow between them. But the truth, she didn't reach out, because she was becoming the woman she had dreamed of, and that version of herself didn't have room for what-ifs. Still. On quiet nights, when the noise of ambition faded, she'd sometimes whisper his name to the darkness, just to remember how far she had come, and who helped her take the first step. Growth looks good on the outside, but inside, it can be messy. Julia had always told herself she was doing the right thing, chasing dreams, expanding, becoming. But lately, a quiet guilt had started knocking on the door of her success. She would scroll back to old photos, her and Ethan, laughing in that bookstore, ice cream nights under yellow bulbs, handwritten notes taped to her backpack. Sometimes, she'd type out a message, "Hey. Just checking in." Then erase it before hitting send. It wasn't that she didn't care, it was that she didn't know how to care now. How do you tell someone, "Thank you for loving me when I was small, but I had to grow," even if it meant leaving you behind? One night, during a class discussion on ethics, her professor asked, "Is it possible to outgrow someone and still be grateful for them?" Julia's chest tightened. She realized then that it wasn't Ethan she was avoiding. It was the version of herself that still felt like she owed him something. He had been her bridge, but she wasn't meant to live on the bridge forever. She was meant to cross it, and she had. Still, that didn't make it easier, because no one talks about how heavy it feels to be the one who outgrows love. No one tells you that success can come with a grief that doesn't have a name. She wondered if he hated her now, or worse, if he didn't care anymore at all. Either way, she didn't reach out, not yet. It had been over a year since Julia left, and in that time, she had done everything she thought she was supposed to do. Worked hard, built a brand, grew a name, but sometimes, at night, she'd still open Ethan's page, not to message, not even to like a post, just to see. For a long time, his feed stayed the same, blurry photos of books, quiet sunsets, an occasional quote, but that night, it was different. He had posted a picture, him, with someone new. She was beautiful, natural smile, messy bun, eyes that looked like they knew peace. The caption was just 3 words, "Finally felt light." Julia stared at the photo for a long time, not because she was jealous, but because it was real. He wasn't waiting for her, he wasn't bitter, he had simply moved on. That's when she felt it. Not heartbreak, not regret, but a strange, unfamiliar emptiness. She had outgrown the love, but he had released it, and somehow, that made her feel more lost than ever. She realized that he had loved her fully, without needing to hold on, and maybe, just maybe, she had loved him less than she thought she did. Or maybe she just loved herself more, still. When she put her phone down that night, she cried, not because she wanted him back, but because she never thought he'd stop wanting her. She didn't plan to see him, it just happened. Julia had flown home for a tech conference, a speaking gig, a big one. She wasn't the girl from the bookstore anymore, she was the headliner. Power suit. Sharp mind. Calm voice. She didn't feel nervous, until she walked out of the venue and heard someone say her name, "Julia?" She turned. It was him, Ethan. Same kind eyes, slightly taller, more mature, but still. Ethan, he smiled, not awkward, not forced, just warm. "Didn't think I'd run into you," he said. "Me neither," she whispered. They stood in silence for a few seconds. The air between them felt familiar, but new. "You look different," he said. "You look happy," she replied. He laughed. "I am. Life's been kind." She nodded. "You deserve that," and for a brief moment, she wondered if he could see everything she had become, all the rooms she had walked into, all the fears she had buried. "I saw your talk," he said. "You were brilliant." That word hit her like a wave, because once upon a time, Ethan had called her beautiful. Now he called her brilliant, and somehow, that meant more. Before they said goodbye, she asked, "Are you still with her?" He nodded. "Yeah. She's good to me." Julia smiled. "I'm happy for you." And she meant it. For the first time in a long time, she meant it. That night, Julia didn't cry. She didn't second guess. She didn't reach out. She just rested. Because when your past meets your present, you realize, some people were not meant to stay. They were meant to prepare you for who you were always becoming. Julia sat by the hotel window that night, the city buzzing softly below her feet, but her mind wasn't in the present. It was floating between two versions of herself, the girl Ethan once knew, and the woman he just met. That girl used to hide her voice. Now she speaks on stages. That girl used to ask for permission. Now she gives herself grace. That girl once cried because she didn't think she was enough. Now she inspires others to believe they are. But even as she smiled at her own growth, there was still something soft, something sacred about that old version of herself, the one who sat with Ethan in bookstores, the one who dreamed quietly and loved deeply. She didn't want to erase that girl. She wanted to carry her with pride, because here's the truth no one talks about: you don't have to hate your past to love your present. You don't have to forget who you were to become who you're meant to be. And Ethan? He was a chapter, not a footnote, a whole, beautiful chapter that helped shape the woman she was still becoming. He didn't complete her, but he prepared her. That night, Julia wrote in her journal, "I forgive myself for outgrowing people who couldn't come with me." Then she closed it, and in that moment, she wasn't missing anyone. She wasn't chasing anything. She was simply proud. The next morning, Julia woke up early, not because of an alarm, but because something in her heart felt unfinished. So she sat down, opened her laptop, and started typing. Not an email, not a post, just a letter. To Ethan: "Hey, I'm not sending this. Maybe you'll never read it, but I need to say it. I'm sorry, not for chasing my dreams, not for growing, but for not telling you the truth when it mattered most. I was scared. Scared that if I admitted I was changing, I'd lose the one person who loved the older version of me so well. You didn't deserve silence, you deserved honesty. But I didn't know how to say, I love you. But I also need more. You were the boy who planted courage in me, but I had to become the woman who watered it. Alone. Thank you for holding my hand when I couldn't stand. And thank you for letting go when I finally learned how to walk. I'll always root for you, from afar, quietly. Julia." She stared at the screen for a moment, then she closed the tab. She didn't need to send it, because sometimes, the apology isn't for the other person, it's for the version of yourself that still feels guilty for surviving. Julia didn't cry that time. She exhaled, and it felt like peace. 3 years had passed since Julia boarded that flight. 3 years since she whispered goodbye to the girl she used to be. Now, she was invited to speak at a local high school back home. Same country, same city, different version of herself. She almost said no. Not because she didn't care, but because she didn't know if the girls sitting in those chairs would believe someone like her had ever walked those same dusty halls. But the moment she stepped into the auditorium, the moment she saw their eyes, she knew exactly why she was there. These girls didn't need another success story. They needed to hear the part before the success. So she stood tall. No slides. No notes, just her voice. Her truth. I used to sit in seats like yours. I used to believe girls like me didn't get to dream big. I used to think ambition was for people with connections, or money, or fancy names. But I had none of that. I only had two things, a voice and a dream. And I used them until the world had no choice but to hear me. The room was silent. Some girls were teary, a few were already writing down quotes. Julia smiled, because in their faces, she saw who she used to be, not weak, not naive, just waiting to believe in something bigger. After the talk, one girl ran up to her and asked, "Do you ever regret leaving everything behind?" Julia knelt down and said, "Not for 1 second, because everything I left behind was the soil that helped me grow." Julia didn't fly home often, but this time, she stayed a few days longer. One afternoon, she walked past the old bookstore, the one where she first met Ethan. It looked different now, new shelves, new owners, new energy. She walked in anyway. She picked up a book she used to love, ran her fingers over the cover, and whispered to herself, "Thank you for starting here." But this wasn't a sad moment. There were no tears, no haunting memories, just warmth, because healing isn't loud. It doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes, it shows up in stillness. That night, she went home, lit a candle, and opened a new journal. On the first page, she wrote, "I am no longer proving anything. I am no longer running. I am becoming every day. And I am finally free." Weeks later, back in the city, she met someone, not someone who rescued her. Not someone who made her feel small so he could feel big. He saw her, the whole her ambition, her softness, her past. He didn't try to compete with the fire in her, he just stood beside it and let it warm them both. Julia didn't rush it, she didn't need it, but when love found her again, it wasn't built on guilt, or silence, or unfinished versions of herself. It was built on clarity, on peace, on a woman who had faced herself fully and came out gold. She didn't just win, she healed, and that, more than anything, was the real victory. Sometimes the people who believe in you aren't meant to walk the whole journey with you, they're there to light the first match. And growth isn't betrayal. It's okay to become someone your past can't recognize. What matters most is not who stayed, but that you stayed true to who you were meant to become. Julia didn't just win, she healed, and that was the real success. Your dreams are valid, even if they scare others, even if you walk alone for a while. Keep going.